Imagine this. You're sitting across from someone who's smiling, pleasant, agreeable, kind. They nod at everything you say. They offer to help. They never interrupt. And they always make sure you feel heard. You walk away thinking, what a nice person. But deep down, far beneath the polished surface, they're seething. Not at you necessarily, maybe not at anyone, but at something unspoken, something quietly suffocating. Now imagine that someone is you. How many times have you said yes when everything inside you screamed no? How often have you silenced your thoughts just to avoid making it awkward? How many times have you felt the burn of resentment bubbling beneath a smile you forced? You do it because you want peace. You want to be liked. You want to be seen as kind, supportive, good. But here's the disturbing paradox. The more you prioritize being nice, the more you vanish, slowly, quietly, without anyone noticing, not even you. You become a mirror that reflects other people's desires, never your own. A ghost who haunts their own life, a master of pleasing, yet a stranger to self-respect. And with each compromise, each deferment of truth, something sacred dies within you. You begin to forget how to say what you mean. You hesitate before asking for what you need. You downplay your pain so you don't burden others. You forgive too quickly, hoping it'll make you lovable. You laugh at jokes that slice you like razors. And all the while, you wonder why you're so exhausted, so bitter, so invisible. But here's the question no one dares to ask. At what point does kindness become self-erasure? Is there a moment, subtle and quiet, where being good turns into being exploited? Where generosity morphs into self-betrayal? Where understanding others means never being understood? Because here's the truth you've been taught not to see. Being nice is not neutral. It's not harmless. It's not free. Costs you time. Costs you boundaries. Costs you authenticity. Costs you peace. And sometimes, it costs you your soul. The world rewards niceness with shallow approval but punishes authenticity with resistance. So you choose safety. You choose politeness. You choose silence. And every time you do, the version of you who could have stood up, spoken out, or said no, that version dies a little more. No one mourns them. No one remembers them. Because that version of you never got the chance to exist. And here's what's worse. The longer you wear the mask of the nice person, the more others rely on it. They grow addicted to your compliance. They start expecting your silence. They lean on your kindness not out of gratitude, but entitlement. You become their emotional sponge, their peacekeeper, their therapist, their doormat. And the moment you resist, even once, you're not nice anymore. You're selfish. You're dramatic. You've changed. But what if you were never nice to begin with? What if niceness was just a strategy? A shield? A survival tactic shaped by fear, not by virtue? Fear of rejection. Fear of conflict. Fear of abandonment. Fear of not being enough. What if the very thing that wins you love is the thing that's quietly destroying your capacity to live? You've spent your life being the calm in the storm, the glue that holds others together, the one who bends so no one breaks. But what happens when you bend too far? What happens when you break? Will anyone notice? Or will they just say, "She was always so nice. He never caused any trouble. They were easy to get along with." And then they'll move on, still whole, still standing, while you remain shattered and smiling. So ask yourself this: who are you without the mask? Who would you be if you stopped apologizing for your truth? If you stopped smiling through disrespect? If you stopped sacrificing yourself for the comfort of others? Would you still be loved? Would you still belong? Would you even recognize yourself? Or would you finally meet the version of you that's been buried under years of being good? The one who speaks with fire, who loves with boundaries, who chooses honesty over harmony, and who no longer fears being called selfish. Because maybe, just maybe, what the world calls selfish is what your soul calls salvation. And if that's true, then maybe it's time we stop asking how to be nice and start asking what it's costing us to stay that way. But where did this niceness come from? Why do we wear it like a second skin, stitched together by childhood, culture, and fear? What if this isn't who you are, but who you were taught to be? Let's dig deeper. You weren't born nice. You were born raw, loud, demanding, honest. You wailed when you needed food, screamed when you were uncomfortable, and took up space without shame. There was no filter, no performance, no fear of being too much. Then something happened. It didn't come all at once. It crept in through quiet corrections, raised eyebrows, disapproving tones. Don't be so loud. Say thank you. Share, even if you don't want to. Be a good boy. Be a nice girl. Stop crying, or I'll give you something to cry about. Over time, you learned that authenticity was risky, that truth could be punished, that love was conditional. You discovered that when you were agreeable, compliant, and cheerful, people smiled. You were praised. You were safe. And thus, the performance began. You became a role. The good child, the people pleaser, the peacemaker. You twisted yourself into whatever shape would make others comfortable. And with every reward, with every pat on the head, your real self faded a little more. This isn't just emotional conditioning. It's a philosophical problem, a spiritual dilemma. Carl Jung called this phenomenon the creation of the persona, a social mask we wear to fit into the expectations of the world. But behind it lies the shadow, all the repressed parts of ourselves we've buried in order to be accepted. The nice person is often the most dangerous to themselves, because behind the pleasant smile is a vault of unexpressed anger, repressed desires, and forgotten dreams. Jung warned that those who do not confront their shadow become ruled by it. What we do not integrate, we project. What we suppress in ourselves, we begin to hate in others. The fear of being disliked becomes a cage. Friedrich Nietzsche once said, "The surest way to corrupt a youth is to instruct him to hold in higher esteem those who think alike than those who think differently." Niceness is the graveyard of difference. It seeks sameness, avoids conflict, and dilutes truth until nothing sharp remains. And in a world built on systems of control, whether cultural, religious, or corporate, niceness is the lubricant of conformity. We are told that kindness is a virtue, and it is. But niceness? Niceness is not kindness. Niceness is often a lie in a pretty dress, a socially acceptable form of self-abandonment. Arthur Schopenhauer, the bleak German philosopher, believed that human life was driven by a blind, insatiable force he called the will, a striving, wanting, hungering thing. According to Schopenhauer, suffering comes not from conflict, but from denial of that will, from suppressing your desire in the name of artificial harmony. So when you're nice, what are you really doing? You're denying your will, denying your voice, denying your fire. You're feeding everyone else while starving yourself. Society applauds it, because your compliance serves the system. Think about it. Corporations thrive on team players who don't rock the boat. Families revolve around peacekeepers who smooth over the dysfunction. Religious institutions elevate martyrs who suffer quietly. Relationships endure because one person swallows resentment while the other thrives. The nice person becomes the sacrificial lamb for the comfort of the tribe. And yet, Viktor Frankl, who survived the hell of Auschwitz, said this: "When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves." But what if the situation you're in, your nice personality, is not who you are, but a reaction to 1,000 moments of silence? A costume made of survival? If so, then the true rebellion isn't rage. It's truth. Jean-Paul Sartre, the French existentialist, believed that humans are condemned to be free, that we are burdened by the terrifying power of choice. And one of the most radical choices you can make is to stop performing, to stop being nice, and start being real. Because niceness isn't a personality. It's a strategy, a defense mechanism, a way to avoid punishment, a way to avoid the terror of being truly seen. The danger is, the longer you use this strategy, the more you forget it's a strategy. You start to think this is who you are. But is it? Do you remember the last time you said yes, and it felt like a betrayal? Do you remember the last time someone crossed your boundary and you let it slide? Again, do you remember the last time you were exhausted, not from doing too much, but from pretending too much? That's the cost. That's the rot underneath the surface. And it's not just emotional. It becomes biological. Chronic people-pleasers live in a constant state of low-grade stress. Their nervous systems are hijacked by the need to please, to be accepted, to avoid conflict. This creates hormonal imbalances, adrenal fatigue, anxiety, depression, even autoimmune disorders. Because when you betray yourself long enough, your body starts to revolt. Your very biology demands truth, but your fear demands performance. And so you're split between who you are and who you've been trained to be. This split is the origin of the pain. And the longer you avoid it, the more unbearable it becomes. So we must ask, what would it take to stop being nice? To confront the fear that created the mask? To let go of the applause and approval and safety in exchange for wholeness? We're not there yet, but we're getting close. Because now you see the problem. Now you've traced the roots. But what if the damage runs deeper than just discomfort? What if this niceness isn't just hurting you, but everything around you? What if your silence is enabling cruelty? What if your compliance is feeding dysfunction? What if your fear of being disliked is the very thing keeping injustice alive? Let's go further. Let's expose the real cost. Not just to you, but to the world you're trying to protect. You think being nice is harmless, but that's the illusion. That's the comfort you wrap around yourself like a warm blanket, believing your silence is peace, your self-denial is virtue, your fake smile is kindness. But what if it's not? What if every time you bite your tongue, you are complicit in a lie? What if your politeness is the camouflage behind which monsters hide? Let's peel this further. Imagine a workplace. A colleague harasses another, makes repeated comments that are cruel, cutting, inappropriate. You see it. Everyone does. But no one says a word. Not because they agree, but because they are nice. Because they don't want to be the difficult one. Because they tell themselves it's not their business. Because they're waiting for someone else to take the fall. And so the abuse continues. Now magnify that. Look at systems of injustice, racism, sexism, corruption. How do these things survive? Not through the bold evil of a few, but through the silent consent of the many. Through good people who say, I don't want to cause problems, and then walk away. Through the endless tide of niceness that dulls the sharp edges of truth. This is the cancer of nice. It spreads not by malice, but by avoidance. The road to hell isn't paved with bad intentions. It's paved with unspoken truths. And what about your relationships? Think of the times you told someone, it's fine, when it wasn't. Think of the times you pretended not to care, just to avoid the weight of confrontation. Think of the person who kept taking, and you let them because you didn't want to make things weird. You called it patience. You called it maturity. But deep down, you knew you were betraying yourself. You were turning your body into a storage unit for unspoken resentment. You were converting your boundaries into bargaining chips. And every time you smiled while swallowing pain, you reinforced a dynamic where your needs did not matter. Over time, it corrodes you, not all at once. It starts subtly. You stop trusting your own voice. You hesitate before saying what you really think. You begin to doubt whether your anger is valid. You fear being labeled rude, cold, selfish. You become what the system wants, agreeable, tame, forgettable. And the people around you, they begin to expect it. They begin to believe your silence means consent. They begin to treat you not as a human, but as a utility. Because when you always say yes, they stop asking if they're taking too much. Niceness invites exploitation. This isn't paranoia. It's biology. Psychologically, people test limits subconsciously or otherwise. The human brain is wired to seek efficiency. If someone never pushes back, we assume they're okay. If someone always complies, we stop considering their boundaries. Niceness teaches others to ignore your soul. And the tragedy is, they believe you prefer it that way. Your silence becomes your reputation. And eventually, when the weight becomes too much, when you finally explode or pull away or break down, they call you unpredictable, dramatic, ungrateful. Why? Because you trained them not to see your pain. You taught them that your discomfort was never urgent. This is the unseen cost. Not just the erosion of your voice, but the erosion of your presence. You disappear behind your own facade. And worse, this mask spreads. You raise children who learn to say yes, even when they mean no. You teach your friends that honesty is dangerous. You show the world that comfort is more important than truth. Think of the cultural rituals we call politeness. We say, "How are you?" without caring. We smile at people we despise. We compliment people we envy. We apologize when we've done nothing wrong. It's not connection, it's performance. And yet we reward it. We call people well-adjusted when they are simply well-trained. We label someone kind when they are simply terrified of being disliked. And behind all this, something darker festers. Because repressed anger doesn't disappear. It mutates. It leaks out sideways. The nice person gossips when they should confront. They sabotage when they should speak. They become passive-aggressive, manipulative, resentful. They lie with a smile, all because they were told that niceness was noble. But the truth? Niceness without boundaries is cowardice dressed as virtue. It protects the wrong people. It silences the right voices. It delays the healing that only honesty can bring. Aldous Huxley, in Brave New World, envisioned a society not of overt violence, but of suffocating comfort. A world where truth was buried beneath distraction, politeness, and pleasure. Where rebellion meant feeling deeply in a world designed to avoid discomfort. We are living in that world. And your niceness might be the very chain that keeps it running. Ask yourself, when was the last time your silence allowed something ugly to survive? When was the last time your desire to be liked overrode your need to be true? When was the last time you felt small, but smiled anyway? This is the reckoning. Because the cost of being nice isn't just personal. It's collective. It maintains abusive families, keeps corrupt leaders in power. It fuels toxic relationships. It silences revolutions before they begin. And the worst part? It robs the world of you, the real you, not the agreeable shadow you've become. So now, the question isn't, how do I keep being nice without losing myself? The real question is, what would it cost me to stop? And deeper still, what would it awaken if you did? There is a rebellion waiting beneath your politeness, a wildfire under the floorboards of your personality. In the next breath, you could ignite it. But before we spark that flame, you must ask, are you willing to be disliked? To be free? Because that's the price. And what you'll gain in return. Let's explore that next. Imagine this. You're standing at the edge of a dinner table, everyone laughing, talking, passing dishes, and suddenly you feel it. That moment. That slight. That subtle disrespect. Someone just dismissed your idea, talked over you, or poked fun at something deeply personal. It was small, quick, easy to overlook. Everyone else keeps talking. No one noticed but you. And you feel it rise, rage in your chest. Your mouth opens slightly, then closes. Your smile stretches back into place. You tell yourself, it's not worth it. But what if it is? What if every time you choose silence over self-respect, you shrink a little more? What if that smile is the muzzle they taught you to wear? Now imagine a different version of you. The you who doesn't flinch, who meets the moment, holds the silence, and says what must be said. Not to wound, but to reveal. Who refuses to carry the weight of other people's comfort at the expense of your own truth. That version isn't born from rage. It's born from clarity. Let's call it sacred rebellion. Because breaking free from the tyranny of niceness isn't about becoming cruel. It's about becoming whole. It's not permission to harm, it's permission to exist fully, even if that existence disrupts others. This rebellion begins in the smallest of moments. When you say no and don't explain yourself. When you sit in silence instead of rescuing a conversation. When you stop apologizing for taking up space. Here's the first rule of this rebellion. You are not responsible for other people's discomfort with your boundaries. Say it again. You are not responsible for their awkwardness when you say no. You are not responsible for their guilt when you tell the truth. You are not responsible for their reaction when you finally become real. Carl Jung once wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But what he didn't say, what they never tell you, is that becoming who you are requires sacrifice. You will lose people. People who loved your compliance. People who thrived on your silence. People who mistook your niceness for endless availability. You will be misunderstood, labeled difficult, cold, selfish. But here's the paradox. Those labels are the first sign of your freedom, because the world only calls you selfish when you stop serving it blindly. The philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre believed that freedom was both a gift and a curse, that once you awaken to your own agency, you must carry the unbearable responsibility of choice. No more hiding behind "I had to" or "I didn't want to upset them." You choose who you become, and that's terrifying, but also exhilarating. You get to rebuild yourself not as a product of politeness, but as a being of truth, not shaped by what others expect, but by what your soul demands. Starts, perhaps, with small declarations. "I'm not comfortable with that. I don't agree. I'm leaving. No." Simple sentences, but each one a match dropped into dry wood. You don't need to raise your voice. You don't need to become cruel. You only need to stop lying, because that's what niceness often is, a lie told to maintain illusion. But you were not born to be agreeable. You were born to be authentic. Viktor Frankl, in his Exploration of Meaning, wrote, "When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves." And perhaps that's the moment you're in now. You can't change that the world rewards politeness. You can't erase the decades of conditioning that taught you to avoid conflict. But you can change you. You can choose integrity over approval, truth over comfort, freedom over fear. But it's a war. You will feel guilt at first. You'll think, maybe I was too harsh. You'll want to send that follow-up text, that apology for simply being honest. Don't sit with the guilt. Let it burn through you. Because guilt is not always a sign you've done something wrong. Sometimes it's a sign you're doing something new. Let the discomfort refine you, not into hardness, but into clarity. Arthur Schopenhauer believed that most people preferred the illusion of harmony to the discomfort of truth. But those rare souls who chose truth, who were willing to feel it, speak it, embody it, they were the ones who evolved. And what does evolution look like? It looks like saying no more without flinching. It looks like ending relationships that feed on your false self. It looks like walking away not because you don't care, but because you finally do. Because your truth matters more than their perception. Because your peace matters more than their praise. And in this rebellion, you'll find strange allies. People who see you finally drawing lines and respect you more, not less. People who were waiting for someone to go first. People who are done playing nice and are ready to play real. You won't be alone. You'll lose the crowd, yes, but you'll find your tribe. The ones who honor your honesty. The ones who speak in soul, not surface. The ones who value connection over compliance. This is not just personal. It's generational. Every time you choose truth over niceness, you break a cycle. You model something different. For your friends, your partners, your children. You create space for honest humanity. So stop asking if they'll still like you. Start asking if you like you. Stop fearing rejection. Start fearing self-abandonment. Stop begging to be understood. Start practicing being undeniable. This is your rebellion, not against others, but against the false self that's been choking you. And on the other side of that fire, a freedom so pure it scares you, but it also saves you. Let's now step into the final truth, the revelation that changes everything.